I grew up with windsurfing around me as my dad was doing it and my 4-year-older brother. And that's how I really got into it. You know, I see my dad blazing over the water and it's like, oh, I really want to do that as well. What I love about the windsurfing is that it makes you feel really free. There is no boundaries out at sea, you know, like if you, theoretically speaking, you can sail to the other side of the world without any stops. And this feeling is very nice, and also that you are purely driven by the elements. You're not doing any mechanical things to propel yourself. The main factors that come into play when you're windsurfing are, of course, the wind. It's the main thing that drives you. And the other thing would be the water, the waves, the current. There's a lot of stuff that you really have to pay attention to make sure that it will benefit you in your performance. It is really funny to try to explain how a windsurfer works. It's almost impossible. It's really something that you need to try yourself and to understand what's going on. But it's kind of like a sailboat. You know, you have your floating device, which is your board, and then you have your propulsion system, which is your sail. And you are the live sheet of the sail. So you are able to close the sail and to open it, which propels you forward. Well, there's many disciplines in windsurfing. There's wave, freestyle, slalom, speed, and Olympic racing. And the Olympic racing looks a lot like sailboat racing, like yacht racing. The RSX is a one-design class, which means that everybody sails on the same equipment. Board, sail, mast, boom. The only difference are the athletes. As an athlete on the RSX, you need to be diverse. You need to be able to perform with light winds, strong winds. You know, it takes an all-round person to be a world champion or an Olympic champion. During the race, you really need to pay attention to your competitors. You need to know where the wind is at and where your opponents are at. And preferably, you end up at the windy spot before them. And then you're doing a good job. So when there's not a lot of breeze, we pump. That's what we call it. And this is moving the sail in such a way that it creates an airflow. The sails are shaped like an airplane wing, something like that. A little bit less technical, but that's the idea of it. And by pumping the sail, you create instability and yeah, you go forward. For you to be able to go as fast as possible, you need to have the least amount of drag. So you try to have your fin profile, which is always in the water, as clean as possible, and your board surface, or especially the bottom, very nice and tidy. And you lean on the back of the board, so there's the least amount of surface also touching the water.
Despite competing against them on the world circuit, Van Rijsselberghe and his coach recently invited other RSX athletes from around the world to join them on a unique training camp, which involved touring the picturesque canals around the Friesland province of the Netherlands.
I always love training against other countries because when you're alone, it's fun, but you know, when you have other people from different cultures, and especially with this week that we're doing right now, we're sailing through the Dutch canals. I have no doubt about it, there is no other place in the world like Friesland. And there's so many boats and there's so many buildings on the water, so much history, and it gets me really stoked to have all these guys and to show what kind of legacy with the sailing we have in Holland. I take great joy out of that, and on top of that, sailing with other countries is just a lot of fun. For me, the whole Olympics and everything that I do is about enjoying it. I love what I do, and as soon as that stops, then I will have to think really hard if I want to keep going.